Hello and good day. Our topic for today in credit and collection is the costs of credit. Without further ado, let's start. The costs of credit. When a creditor decides to give credit to debtor or debtors, the creditor must understand that in doing so, the creditor will necessarily incur all three costs of credit. And what are these three costs of credit? First is interest. Second, credit and collection expenses. And third, bad debts. I will explain each cost of credit one by one. The first cost of credit is interest. Interest is defined as the monetary charge for the privilege of borrowing money. As you can see, this definition of interest is from the point of view of the borrower. The borrower receives money, and by having the privilege of borrowing that money, the borrower will be charged a monetary amount. And that monetary amount is called interest. Interest is also defined as the amount of money a lender receives for lending out money. This time, this definition is from the point of view of the lender. The lender grants credit to borrowers, and in exchange, the borrowers will pay monetary amount. And that monetary amount is called interest. The second cost of credit is credit and collection expenses. As the name implies, credit and collection expenses, these are expenses incurred in granting the credit and collecting the receivables. Ano ba yung mga typical examples ng credit and collection expenses? First, cost of credit investigation or property appraisal or background check. Second, cost of recording and monitoring receivables. And third, cost of collection. Ano ba yung included dun sa number 1? Cost of credit investigation or property appraisal or background check. Of course, yung sahod ng credit investigators. Included in number 1 is the salary of credit investigators. Credit investigators are the ones who perform credit investigation or property appraisal or background check. Aside from the salary of credit investigators, included also in number 1 is the travel expenses. Of course, in conducting or performing credit investigation or property appraisal or background check, gagastos sila sa pamasahe at sa gasolina. Another cost included in number 1 is retrieval fee. When we say retrieval fee, this is the cost of getting information. Sa number 2 naman, cost of recording and monitoring receivables. Of course, yung sahod ng mga employees na engage sa pag-record at pag-monitor ng receivables. The salaries of those who are engaged in recording and monitoring receivables are included in number 2. Aside from the salaries of those who are engaged in recording and monitoring receivables, included also in number 2 is the cost of paperwork. Sa number 3 naman, cost of collection, of course, salaries of those who are engaged in collecting the receivables. Aside from the salaries of those who are engaged in collection, yung telephone expenses din, or otherwise known as telecommunication expenses. Another cost included in number 3 is travel expenses. And lastly, yung legal fees. Yung legal fees, these fees are also included in the cost of collection. The third cost of credit is bad debts. When we say bad debts, these are receivables that a customer will not pay. In other words, bad debts are uncollectible accounts. Bad debts are possible whenever credit is extended to customers. Paano ba nangyayari ang bad debts? Bad debts arise under the following circumstances. First, when a company extends too much credit to a customer that is incapable of paying back the debt, resulting in either a delayed, reduced, or missing payment. And second, when a customer misrepresents itself in obtaining a sale on credit and has no intent of ever paying the seller. Sa first situation, pinautang ng company ng malaki yung customer. Maaaring maganda ang credit standing ng customer or nakakabayad siya on time. That's why the company extends too much credit to the customer. But the problem here is that when credit is too much, maaaring hindi na makabayad yung customer. In the first situation, this is caused by bad internal processes or changes in the ability of a customer to pay. So, isang cause ng first situation ay yung bad internal processes. Maaaring naging kampante si company sa pagbigay ng credit sa customer. Of course, one of the reasons why a company extends too much credit to a customer is that the customer has a good credit standing. That means maganda yung records ng customer. Yun nga lang, kapag yung company nag-extend siya ng too much credit sa customer, maaaring hindi mabayaran nung customer ang kanyang accounts. In some instances, sometimes there will be changes in the ability of a customer to pay. Maaaring may pinagdadaanan siyang financial problem or financial difficulty, insolvent siya, wala siyang pambayad. That's why kapag nangyari yon, there will be bad debts. On the other hand, the second situation is caused by a customer intentionally engaging in fraud. Kapag sinabing fraud, panglilinlang, pandaraya, o panloloko, that is the meaning of fraud. Take note that fraud is an intentional act, sinadya. That is actually the difference between fraud and error. Ang fraud, sinadya. Ang error, hindi sinadya. In the second situation, ang purpose talaga ng customer ay makautang pero hindi siya magbabayad. So that is also one of the reasons why there are bad debts. No company in the course of doing business over a considerable period of time is immune to bad debts. Of course, there is no such perfect company and there is no perfect customer. Or let's say there are no perfect customers. Kahit ginawa na ng company ang lahat ng kanilang makakaya in order to avoid bad debts, that doesn't mean na hindi na sila makaka-experience ng bad debts. Maybe a customer can pay his or her accounts now, but later on, because of unexpected financial difficulty or financial problem, he or she may not be able to pay his or her accounts. Or just like our example a while ago, a customer misrepresents itself in obtaining a sale on credit and has no intent of paying the company. That's why hindi talaga maiiwasan ang bad debts. The most expensive of the three costs of credit is bad debts. Ang pinaka-expensive daw na cost of credit ay bad debts compared sa interest at credit and collection expenses. Bakit nga ba ang bad debts ang pinaka-expensive? Let's say, for example, ang sales ay 25,000 pesos. Ang cost of goods sold ay 20,000 pesos at ang gross profit ay 5,000 pesos. Of course, yung gross profit na 5,000 pesos, that is computed by deducting 20,000 pesos from 25,000 pesos. In other words, 25,000 pesos minus 20,000 pesos, that is equal to 5,000 pesos. Ang sales dito ay 25,000 pesos. Assume na lahat ng sales ay made on credit. Lahat ng nabenta na goods ay inutang ng customers. If ever nagkaroon ng bad debts, for example, lahat ng customers ay hindi nakabayad, yung entire sales na 25,000 pesos, yan ay magiging lugi ng kumpanya. That will be considered as loss of the company. Not only will the company lose the opportunity on the 5,000 pesos potential profit, it will also lose the entire 20,000 pesos cost of goods sold. In other words, the entire sales worth 25,000 pesos will be considered as a loss of the company. But take note, bad debts are of course not entirely lost. Hindi ibig sabihin na kapag hindi nakapagbayad yung customers ay hindi mo na mare-recover ang kanilang payments. Hindi ibig sabihin noon na hindi mo na mare-recover yung loss na nasuffer mo. Hindi mo na mare-recover yung mga pinautang mo. Of course, as a creditor, meron kang magiging remedies. Meron kang gagawin para ma-recover mo yung payments ng borrowers. At ano-ano yung mga remedies ng creditor? First, the creditor may attempt to recover through judicial means. Ang ibig sabihin nito, the creditor will go to the court and file a case against the borrower in order for him to recover the loss that he has suffered. Yun yung ibig sabihin ng judicial. Kapag sinabing judicial, meron ng intervention ang korte. And second, the creditor may attempt to recover through extrajudicial means. Ang ibig sabihin nito, hindi magfa-file ng kaso yung creditor. Pero merong magiging panibagong agreement ang creditor at borrower. So pag-uusapan nila kung paano makakabayad yung borrower or customer. Bad debts are not entirely lost, but what is lost forever is the account of a customer. Of course, do not expect a customer against whom you filed a court case to come back to you, and you would not wish to take him back also. Kapag nakapag-file ka na ng case against the customer, expect na hindi na babalik yung customer sa company. And of course, since hindi maganda yung records ng customer, hindi mo na gusto na babalik yung customer sa company. That's why what is lost forever is the account of a customer.